Right. So we read chapter 3, and the whole subject for chapter 3 was to mask or not to mask. And when I was reading this chapter, I really had some moments where I was like, am I autistic? Like, do I have autism? I really was like, the masking thing really opened my eyes. And then I realized, no, I'm just black in America. And we have a lot of similarities. I didn't realize. And I say that, let me explain to you because, okay, in the autistic community, and we're going to go over the details and what Kim gave us and everything, because man, she gave some really great insight, right? Because masking is not unique to autism. And that's what she literally said. And that's why I got my notes, right? She was saying that masking is also called camouflaging. And it is the practice of acting in a way that would be seen as normal or socially acceptable. Masking is not unique to autism. So when I read that, and I was like, oh, I have to write that down for the chat, because as a black person, especially you'll know if you were raised in a household where black excellence was very key, and that's the type of household I grew up. I didn't grow up in poverty or anything like that. I grew up privileged in a sense. Um, uh, Athleticism and education was very important in my household, and keeping a certain image was very important in the household that I grew up. And plus, whether or not you grew up in a privileged environment or not, just as a black person, a common thing that we know in our culture is something called code switching, where we know, like, if you're going to get on the phone or you're going to be in certain environments, you need to dress a certain way. You need to speak a certain way. You can't be yourself, is pretty much what it is. And that is something similar to what autistic people are dealing with that Kim had opened my eyes to with the whole masking thing. And we know how exhausting it is to have to put on this air in order to be seen as acceptable and to be heard, that you do have to talk a certain way. Even the way that I'm talking to you now, this is how I talk. I have a little bit of twang. I'm from California, so it may be considered a little bit proper. This is just me, no matter what, right? But I remember being younger and putting a little bit more of a, I don't know. I didn't even know how to get. How do I get into that voice? I mean, let me act like I'm talking on the phone. Hello, how can I help you? This is Nisha. Hi. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like, it's a little bit higher pitched, I guess, the tone. You feel like, oh, maybe you'll accept me a little bit more if I'm not like, hey, girl, what's going on with you, girl? Oh no. So like, there's a whole nother language that we speak at the cookout that is different than what we speak in the workforce, right? To be acceptable. And we're always trying to figure out, well, what is that tone? And sometimes you could put it on and people still hear, I'm talking to a black person. But when it comes to the community of those who are autistic, very, very similar of what they are dealing with. And so she was saying you're having a constant awareness and focusing on not being yourself most of the time, and just how exhausting that is. And I feel like if more of us within the community knew about what people were going through with autism, because a lot of us aren't privy to what it is, how to deal with it, how to manage it, how to understand it, we would be so much more accepting in our community of people with autism. I feel like a lot of times we are already, even without acknowledging it as autism within the black community. A lot of times we're just like, oh, that's just that cousin. They just always matching. They just always, talking about that, that's just them. We don't really shun autistic people that I've seen in my community. You can put in the comments what you've experienced. But from what I've noticed is we more so kind of put it off as like, you just a little different. You just, ain't nothing wrong with you. That's how we see it, and I feel for people in other communities, especially in the Caucasian community, because that culture is all about professionalism and that culture is all about presenting a certain way. So you don't being othered is not something they're used to. So when their child is autistic, the bullying from their own community, the ostracism that their family feels from not being able to be a part of that culture is something else that they deal with that I don't understand because I'm not a part of that community. My husband is, he is an Australian white person, and his brother is autistic, and I see the difference where I'm like, wow, like, for my daughter, she is, I've told you guys before, if this is your first time, my daughter is on the spectrum. She's what would be considered, and I know some people don't like these terms of mild, but she's considered to have a mild case of autism. Her thing is more social and behavioral in a way, her learning just how to adjust and understand. I always give an example of like my daughter would probably be one extreme or the other. She probably either, without therapy and help, be the really quiet, pretty girl in the back that everyone's like, she's weird, but she's cute. If she only got herself together, she'd probably be the most popular girl in school, not knowing she's autistic. She gets social anxiety, the room's too loud. It's all these different things that she's going through, and she just rather just put her head down and sit in the back of the classroom. Or the other extreme, because my daughter is conventionally attractive, she could end up being Regina George. And that's more so what I'm afraid of, honestly, because she's very popular. She has friends. She loves socializing, but she could be mean and she could be blunt, and she doesn't mean it that way, but it could come off that way, and she could end up being the most popular girl in school, terrorizing everybody. So I'm trying to help you and my child and your future children not have to potentially deal with a Regina George. That's what we're dealing with on my end. For some other parents with autism, it's like their children are so much further along on the spectrum that the way they think and understand things can make it a little bit more difficult for them to adjust in society. Whereas for the things that my daughter is dealing with, she's still able to be within society. And in my opinion, we'll go over, I feel like the high functioning autistic people don't really have as much advocacy because people feel like, well, you could still get a job. You could still, work. And they don't understand. Like, for example, I was at Staples last week, and I know God put me in this situation because he was like, you talking about advocating for these people? We're going to put your advocacy to practice, okay, when it's not your child, right? Go to Staples. I'm waiting for something. I was picking up like some documents I had printed because haven't bought a printer. I need to do that. Anyways, I'm going there. This young man, he's helping this lady. And then there's a girl, and she's like working on something, getting some papers together or whatever. And I'm standing there, and in my head, I'm thinking, I'm like, why doesn't she just come over here and help me? Like, I'm getting irritated in my mind, like, why is she over there doing that? And she should be asking me, or at least come over here and say, ma'am, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get to you or whatever. So I'm fuming a little bit. I'm like, how she is behaving, right? And she just mind her own business, doing her thing. And then she comes over to me. And when she opens up her mouth, the way that she asked me, oh, how can I help you? I knew right then, oh. And then she helped me perfectly fine. And she said, pleasure, like, the way that she said it, I could tell it was almost like a script thing because I know how my daughter does her scripts. So I was just like, oh, God convicted me, y'all. God convicted me. Like, girl, this is you're the neurotypical problem. You are the neurotypical problem in this world, Nisha. That's how I felt about it. Like, be patient, be calm with people, because she was just focused on what she was doing. She wanted to make sure that she was doing it right and getting it done. And sometimes the multitasking elements, like when we talked about in the last episode with a young boy, he couldn't look someone in their eyes and listen to them at the same time. That's just not how his brain was operating. He was like, I got to look away to really listen to you. That's just how his brain operated. That doesn't make it right or wrong. That's just him. And so that's one of the things that we have to come to understand, is that we can do much better together, united, having understanding for one another, than to be so entitled, because that's what I would call myself from the outside in, and how I behave. So I want to talk with you about the type of mask that Kim discussed, because if you are autistic, or you have an autistic child, or you're in the community or whatever, or you're just here to learn more because we're reading this book, I really thought these points were pivotal, because then you'll be able to start seeing these things within society and be able to be a better person. That's what we're trying to work on here on the rug. We're not perfect. We want to strive as close to it. We want to aim for the moon, because at least if we aim for the moon, we'll touch the stars. That's all we can do. We make mistakes. Look at me. Look at what I did. Okay, I didn't go off on the girl, but I was close to it. You know, that's the reality. All we could do is get better. So the types of masks that she talked about was, one is disguising self-stimming behavior. And the stimming is also, it's a spectrum. Like the doctor that diagnosed my daughter, Dr. Lou, he saw little stems where he's like, oh, it's a slight, she does this when she gets uncomfortable, or what. He saw things where I had never noticed at all. I should be good storage wise now. Like, I gotta either buy a camera for recording, or I really need to get all of my videos and stuff on a USB. Anyways, let's get back to book chat. Yeah, so we were going through the different types of masks. Hiding anxiety or stress was another one. Hiding your personal interests. That was what I ended off on. When you become an adult, being obsessive with your personal interests, those are some of the most successful people. Like, reading this, I was like, if I have a doctor, I definitely want my doctor to be autistic, like to really be interested and obsessed with what the subject matter is that they're into. But when you're younger and you're really into things, or even as an adult, like, people can get annoyed because they feel like, oh, you just talk about this over and over and over again. So they read that as like an issue. So they'll mask their interest and act like they're not really interested in things, because they don't want to come off like autistic. They don't want to come off like something's wrong with them, or that they're different. They want to be like everyone else and fit in. So the reasons for the masking is that, and she listed it's to avoid bullying, to make friends, to avoid the stigma, which we talked about in a previous episode, to fit in and to do well in school, because going back to what I talked about previously before, everything is about compliance. Sit down, behave, act this way that we think is best for you to act. And so it makes not only autistic children, but neurotypical children feel as though being themselves is a problem. And we as parents have a responsibility to train these young people up into adults that can express themselves, so that they can be creative and help the world, so that they can be whoever or whatever. Just be that. Be what God made you to be, whatever that is. Let it out. Because if we don't allow you to be yourself, then whatever it is that you're dealing with, we can't help you to navigate this world. And I feel as though it's becomes a cycle. So the parents may have not been given that level of support. So then they feel like, I don't know how to be supportive to my child. And that's the point of this show, and the things that we're learning together, that you can have this space to be okay with not being perfect and not always doing the right thing, but being open to receiving the information to say, oh, okay, you know what? I got to let you be who you are. And I can't allow my fear of what the world and how they may treat you to navigate you not feeling safe at home. And so she talked about that too, because a lot of times the home environment is where the autistic children or the neurodivergent children feel the most safe. They don't have to mask any longer. So we do want our home to be a place of peace for our children. And if you feel as though your home is a place of chaos for yourself, let alone your kids, maybe it is that wake up call to say, hey, I need to make it a priority that the environment and the atmosphere that I am in is a place of peace, not only for me, but for my children. One of the things I wanted to talk about too before we move on to business lesson story time was this concept of double empathy. And it's a theory by Dr. Damian Milton, and it explains the disparities between autistic and non autistic people. And society sometimes displays prejudice toward autistic people. The theory is based on that it is always difficult for one group to put itself in another's shoes. And I think that goes across so many things: prejudice when it comes to racism, when it comes to people's differences, whether it's skin color, mental differences, physical differences. We tend to gather together and unite on one side and have averses towards the other. When in reality, we are all humans that are souls having a earthly experience together, trying to figure out this thing, trying to figure out where do we belong. And if we have this essence of double empathy, which is like the moment that I had at Staples. Oh, you know what? Okay. Let me have some empathy and compassion for this young girl because she's doing the best that she can, just like I am. And not based off her difference, giving her empathy, but because we're both human beings.